2021 Prudential Committee of the Katuitt Fire District order. I'll do roll call. Seth Burdick,
Seth Burdick, Prudential Committee, here.
Ray Perone,
Ray Perone, treasurer, here.
Charlie Eager,
Charlie Eager, clerk, here.
Paul Hanley,
Paul Hanley, Prudential Committee, here.
Fran Parks Prudential Committee. Do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is Rick Pisano here? Don't see him.
Yes, I'm here, Fran.
Oh, hi, Rick. Do
All
you
right, I'm
want?
just still getting set up. I'm running a little behind.
Oh, okay.
Here
So-
we go.
I just wanted to know if you wanted to discuss Article 17 now or wait till we get down to the warrant.
We can wait till we get down to the warrant.
Okay, all right. So,
Thank you, though.
Ray, we're all set.
I circulated the draft budget. And there really wasn't any substantial change from the prior week when we looked at it in rough form with the fire and water department budgets. I added financing, again, a rough estimate on what I foresee the financing to be. And I'll just kind of point out the changes that I made. The reserve account goes from 60 down to 45. We've reduced the contingency for COVID from $30,000 to $15,000 for that article. The finance stays relatively the same. I think I tweaked a number. It might have gone up by $1,000. And I think that was probably in the payroll tax area as I went back through each of those line items to make sure that we had covered everything. Fire department made two changes to the capital articles for the replacement ambulance. We were finally able to get a firm quote on that vehicle, and it's $65,000. And we have a firm quote on the, it's actually, this is an old version of the budget. There were so many changes that I finally did catch up with the fact that we're replacing the chief's SUV this time around. We replaced the deputy the last time. Have I got it right now, Paul?
No, it's backwards.
Backwards? Okay, so this is the correct one. I changed it so many times, I obviously confused myself. So we replaced the chief at the last year, and now we're replacing the deputy chief, and we got a final estimate on that of $48,000. I believe those are the only two changes to the fire department. The water department, there were no changes. The street lights were no changes at $7,000. Library, I've not received a request as yet, so I simply increased that 2.5% from last year. I guess we're going to have to reach out to them to see if we can get a letter from them. The principal and interest remained unchanged at $398, and the benefits remain the same at three, excuse me, I'm trying to, the debt budget is 398, unchanged. The benefit budget is 398, unchanged. The transfer to stabilizations, the two stabilization funds, general for the district, and then separate one for water, that remained unchanged. And then we come to the space needs, which changed several times in the past day, and I think we're zeroing in on some firm numbers in just about every category. We have a quote from District Council on what the legal costs would be to execute the transfer and for the title insurance. I now have a direct quote from Bennett Associates for the Phase 1 ESA study. And I put in a $2,000 contingency for the unknown unknowns that you sometimes encounter in such transactions. In the operating expense, which it's decided that we're going to only do 2 articles, one to acquire and maintain, and then one to develop and define the costs of alternative uses for the property. In the annual operating, the second half of the first motion, we have a specific quote for the insurance. We don't have a quote for the electrical. The only one we had from the town was for heat and electrical. So what I did was take 80% of what we pay for our streetlights on the theory that to maintain an alarm system and a couple of outside lights cannot be more than it costs to operate the streetlights in the entire village. So that, I think that's a generous inclusion for that category. Draining the water and isolating the boiler. 4-man days of commercial plumber, I think is reasonable. And then finally, we should provide something for unknown maintenance facts that will come up. There will be broken windows. There will be lights that need to be replaced. So I provided a contingency of $10,000 to cover again, the unknown unknowns. And I think that's reasonable. So the total for the article to acquire and maintain the property for fiscal 22 is $45,000. The development of alternative use costs, we now have a definitive vendor quote on what that will be. From the successor organization to the one that did the original space needs study for the district. And they are going to update and renew that study for to include the school property and to identify the cost of implementing what they find in the school or in the space needs study and any other uses that the Prudential or its delegates may define. They have identified 4 uses already. I think it pretty well covers the scope of what we would want. So I think we can view that as a pretty complete quote. I've also added the project manager of $40,000. This again would be something that would give another set of knowledgeable eyes to review what the consultants come up with and set the basis for the RFPs that we would be requiring if the district were to select one of the the alternative uses. And then I provided $1,600 to fund a special district meeting for the district to make its decision on what the disposition of that property should be. Overall, that the next thing, going back to the summary page, one of the articles closes a number one of the motions rather, closes a number of articles that are open and outstanding and awaiting the closure by the district vote. When they do that, there are a couple of deficits that have to be funded, but beyond that, there is $31,000 that I'm proposing in the motion. The district could vote to apply to the space needs study. That will reduce the overall appropriation included in the budget of $5,134,350, which is 2.9% higher than last year, and would, based on the estimates at this point, result in approximately a 7% increase in the tax rate. The difference between the amount to be appropriated and the tax amount is a decline in the amount of free cash available. We had a number of deficits that had to be covered in the free cash, which reduced it from the level of the prior year. Also, I believe receivables were up, which also acts to reduce the free cash. I'm asking for 560. It hasn't been approved yet. I'm hoping to get that resolved this week. So if that comes in at the 560 level, we would simply use another $100,000 to reduce the amount of the tax appropriate, the raise and appropriate from taxes. That completes the summary of the changes. I presume that people will want to focus on the Articles 16 and 17, which is the acquisition and development of the cost of alternate uses. Unless there are questions on anything else that I cover.
Ray, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if there's enough money in the public buildings budget, but I was hoping that this year that we might be able to do a little bit of work on the ladies' room at Freedom Hall. The sink has 2 handles on it instead of having a mixing valve, which is safer. And whenever the last time was when they installed the newish toilet in there, they didn't exactly make it level. So it's got a shim under it and it wobbles. So that really needs to be taken care of. So I'm not sure if we're going to have enough money of the 22,785 to take care of that, along with the maintenance of the outside.
Yeah, I would say we're light. I would say we're probably, from your description, $5,000 to $8,000 light.
Oh, no, I don't think we need that much. I think under 2, probably. What needs to be done is the sink needs to be changed. We need a new sink, new faucets. The toilet needs to be taken up. I suspect, like the other side, the men's room, that the floor under the toilet actually needs to be repaired.
Mm-hmm.
We did over there, and then you'd be able to reinstall the toilet and it'd be level. So I'm thinking most maybe $1,500.
Wow.
I don't think it's going to cost any more than that.
Well, $1,500, you've got a budget of $6,000 for building repairs. Is there anything else that you would,
Nope, that's the only thing that needs repair, and I just wanted to make sure it could be covered.
if it's only gonna be 1,500, I would think that, we would probably be able to, cover that with the existing budget, maybe add $1,000.
Okay.
Why don't we just add $1,000
Okay.
to that, and then we should have it adequately taken care of.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, so,
I have a question for Ray.
yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, on the alternative development determination, the 207,500 line item, the alternative uses or demolishing it, how many alternative uses are being looked at in this approach? And who's, remind me, I think you said it before, but who's doing that work and who manages that work?
We're looking at 4 alternatives.
Or,
I think that let's see if I can articulate the 4. The first one would be using the school property for district offices. The second would be using it for district offices and the fire station. A third would be to demolish it and build a standalone fire station. And the fourth is to simply demolish it and greenfield the space. Can I ask Paul to the chief to confirm that?
Sure, it's close. So the study is a complete evaluation of district space needs. So they have got subcontractors that would look at the fire, water department of Prudential, analyze our operations, figure out exactly what all of us, the whole district needs for facility space. And after that, they would evaluate 4 options. The first option is to renovate and or expand all current district facilities to meet current
That's right,
needs.
yeah.
The second is to renovate the Katuah Elementary School to meet district needs with the extra space being used as community space. The third was to demolish the Katuah Elementary School and build a new facility to just meet district facilities, so Prudential, water, and fire. And the fourth was to demolish the Katuah Elementary School and renovate the space for, or renew the green space, so replant natural vegetation. Those were the 4 options they were going to look at.
And who, I'm sorry, who is the group that does that? And then who manages that effort?
Okay, the group that, so we did it, went out for an RFP 2 years ago, I think, for, to pick an architectural company to do the original district needs study. We picked a group called, the architectural company was Brown, Lindquist, Finuccio. They've changed their name over the last year to Catalyst Engineering. So it's the same company. It would be an amendment to the current facility study we have. According to the district attorney, we can keep the current company without going back out to an RFQ process. I think everybody in the district was fairly happy with this company. So it would be Catalyst Architects that would do the study with subcontracting for some of the specialty fire station analysis and water department analysis. Who would manage it? So the proposal is that we would hire the district hire an OPM, an owner's project manager. It was an independent professional who would manage the study, take their recommendations, advise the district, give presentations of their analysis and study to the district, and just be our in-between person that manages the project. It's not required we have an OPM. We can have a study done and manage it ourselves. the OPM is not required until we actually start construction. So once the district would decide they wanted to do construction or renovation, the law requires them to have an OPM, which meets certain standards. The study process is not required, but the OPM adds a level of expertise that none of us has. He'll do value engineering. This is a professional that's done probably hundreds of public construction projects. So I think the $40,000 is probably well worth the money, but not a requirement.
Thanks, Paul. And when was the last study done?
3 years ago.
Thank you.
I have a question briefly here. So what is the turnaround time estimate for this study? Say we enacted it, it goes through, and how long roughly?
They're estimating 6 months.
And what's the school committee itself's stance on this particular proposal? Is there a,
No, we haven't, the school committee hasn't discussed this in any way, shape or form. Lisa, can we go back to looking at people instead of? The school committee hasn't discussed this.
right, but they will obviously as time goes by, or prior to that. I guess what I'm really asking is will they take this on, since if we do adopt this as what we'd like to send for the warrant, will they take on the PR role in this particular, getting the message out there?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, I suppose, it's difficult because, we don't have the email of everybody in the district.
Right.
I was gonna say the Civic Association
Yeah,
might be the better vehicle to
but I think
communicate with the community.
they only have like 500 names or something,
Right.
And so, but there are other ways to publicize it. We might, we can put it on Facebook. The water department has Facebook and the fire department has Facebook. And so,
Right. That's what I mean, because I know our next thing on the agenda is the school committee, but I guess relative to this, I'm just curious about how, if we do want to come to the meeting with these options, how we can get the message out there best and make sure that everyone's aware of it and get everybody talking about it, as opposed to people feeling as if, well, what's this all of a sudden?
well, I think probably the best at this point in time, we usually have a budget meeting prior to the vote in the annual meeting. So we might want to, have a couple of school committee meetings to present this information. And, I think that's going to be the best way for people to hear about it.
Right.
Just a quick,
Sure. Yes, Paul?
yeah, just to piggyback on that, Fran, I think that's a good idea. Seth's initial point and your point to have a couple sessions before the district vote, I think is a good one, because we need to get information out to people to avoid them running off with their own information, which may not be accurate. And I think it's important, to let folks know which direction, the Prudential Committee and others want to go. So I think it's a good idea. I just wanted to say, I think your idea of a couple meetings before that is a good one.
Thanks. Okay, so can we move on to the draft capital improvement plan? I sent you the changes that we made at our last meeting. Which, does anybody have any questions? So the first change was on page 1, second paragraph. The capital budget shall comprise of expenditure of $10,000 or as set by the Prudential Committee for the following. As set by the Prudential Committee for the following was a change. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth paragraph, the change was to change a subject to Prudential Committee concurrence, we changed that to review and district approval.
Fran,
Yep,
I think the word should be recommend. The bylaws, section 5, or Article 5, section 2, says it's the responsibility of the Prudential Committee to recommend the fire and water department budgets to the district. So I think the appropriate word there is recommend.
any other, Jeff, Paul?
Not for me. I think recommend and review, they're interchangeable relatively, right? So we don't have to take it back again and then come again with that.
No.
I don't have anything other than Ray's point. If it's in the bylaws, we might want to use the word that's in the bylaws, just to be clear.
So we'll make it recommend. On the second page, item 2, number D, I just included the clarification that Rick asked about, which is asset or operating enhancement, i.e. equipment.
And
And then down in 5, section C, I think it was a Scribner's error. It said, note, such projects may pay closed by the Prudential Committee. And I think, Ray, what you meant was such projects may be closed?
I think you're right.
Yeah, okay. So,
Can we go back up to the equipment?
yes,
I'm going to disagree with my friend Rich. I think you ought to eliminate that. We spent a great deal of money this past year on water department security. Substantial part of that was software. And going forward, we're going to be spending more money on software rather than on just equipment.
okay.
So I think if you just take it out, I mean, a capital enhancement can be the purchase of land, you're enhancing the water well district, you're enhancing the software. So I think by using equipment, you're gonna limit what would be included in that budget.
Okay, all right. So could I have a motion to accept the capital improvement plan policy as discussed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Seth,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you. Okay. So now we're at the annual meeting site. Charlie?
Yes.
So I seem to remember that we got some information about having an annual meeting and that we could do it indoors. And we didn't have to limit the number of people. Is that correct? I couldn't find my copy of that information.
I didn't receive it, but I believe you could still have it indoors.
Okay,
I know you can because Bonspel does.
yeah. Okay. And are you keeping people 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart?
We're trying 6 feet.
Okay. Because I'd like to suggest that we have the annual meeting at the school. I think there are going to be a significant number of people, and I think we're not going to be able to do it keeping people 6 feet apart. I mean, just as an example, when I set up Freedom Hall for a meeting with the public 6 feet apart, we were able to have 24 members of the public. So, I guess I'll check with the town health department. I think if they're recommending that kids in school can be 3 feet apart, I don't think there's any reason we can't be 3 feet apart because people seem to forget the recommendation is to wear a mask or be 6 feet apart. It's not mask and 6 feet apart. So if we can't do that, then, I think we'll have to go back to the ball field. But either spot, we're gonna need to contact Jerry for the sound
Recording.
system. Yeah, and the recording. And I'm not sure what else the town would want us to do to the building. It's not very clean, but you know, the dirty part of it is, you know, we'd need a ladder truck to get in there and clean it. And we'll need another porta potty because the bathrooms aren't available, and there's no handicap bathroom. So it's but I think we should be able to vote at Freedom Hall, and I think we can do what they did for the voting last fall, which is had people come in the front entrance, excuse me, and then go out the parking lot side door. And that seemed to work well for the town when they did the voting. So, okay. And I'll just say a word about the school committee, even though it's not on the warrant. We've contacted the town manager to, you know, wanting to sit down and discuss with him, you know, splitting up the property and possibly putting, you know, having the White Pine acreage conservation and putting conservation restrictions on the remaining town property. So to protect the well. And I haven't heard anything. I've just heard that David Anthony, who's the asset manager for the town, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. The asset manager for the town contacted Paul, or Mark Ellis sent the email requesting a meeting to David Anthony, who contacted Paul, who's going to be getting back to me, presumably, about when we can have a meeting to discuss the parameters of, you know, taking over the property. So that's the update on the school committee. So do we want to go over the warrant, the whole warrant, or?
Fran, do you have some additional articles?
Yes, at least two for bylaw changes. We're meeting the 15th.
Mhm.
I'll get you those then. And I do have a concern about Article 16, which is to raise, you know, as Ray reported, was to raise and appropriate or transfer and appropriate $45,000 to enable the Prudential Committee to, you know, for the transfer. I think we need a clean article without any money associated with it, asking the voters if they wish to accept the school transfer from the town, yay or nay. And then we can, you know, go on to the financing of it. So anybody else have an opinion about that?
So would that be then, would it just be lowered earlier in the article list insofar as we would vote on it and then continue to the article, which would then fund it? And if there was a nay, or would it involve a separate special district meeting? You know what I mean? If we ask at this one, we say, okay, does everyone want it, yay or nay? And then we have to then come back again.
No, not come back again, but have a
Just do it in this document earlier than the.
Yeah, just
so
in between
article.
15 and 16, you know,
Right.
just, you know, have a vote on whether or not we want to accept the building. Yes or no. And then, you know, if the answer is yes, then we can do, you know, the $45,000 that we need for the transfer and to maintain the building. But I just think this is too complex. You know, it's talking about money to do stuff with the building before we've decided if we actually want to accept the building.
Fran, I think, you know, your overriding point, I think, is a good one that I agree with, which is, you know, to include this in a document like this, you know, if people are evaluating the Katuitt School only based on these additional costs without having a sense of what the alternatives are. I mean, if we don't get it transferred from Barnstable County, then, they could demolish it and do with it what they want to do, which is more likely to be something we don't want to be done. And I would imagine most Katuitt residents would agree with that. Then the second issue is the costs. But if you put the costs as the first issue, then I think you potentially the citizens may reach a different outcome. And so I think it has to be orchestrated in a way where I think you're right, Fran, which is you present the idea of having the property transferred, whether or not people are supportive of that. You lay out, if that doesn't happen, what could likely happen, and let people decide that. And after that, then you begin to discuss the costs. But if you discuss the costs first, then people don't have that broader trade-off in mind.
I agree 100%. I think whether or not to accept the school transfer that question should stand alone.
Ray, you got your hand raised.
Just being devil's advocate, what if they pass the motion to accept the property, but decline the motion to fund it? What do we do then?
They don't want to fund it, then, we can't accept the property. We have no money to fund the transfer with.
I mean, I think the sequencing, it could be together, right? I mean, the broad concept of getting the property transferred, laying out, if that doesn't happen, what Barnstable could do with the property. They would be able to decide whether they want to demolish it, whether they want to develop that property. They need to understand the alternatives if we don't get the property. And maybe at the same time, as you discuss that, say, if we do receive it and get it transferred to us, there will be some costs involved.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you can do that all together. But I just worry, Fran, the point you made up front, doing only the cost without having that broader discussion at the beginning. Because when I talk to people in Katuitt, the idea of letting Barnstable County decide whether to demolish it and what to do with that is not something most people are interested in. And of course, that's going to incur some costs if we are going to be able to get the property transferred and decide ourselves as residents of Katuitt what to do with the property. Of course, that's going to cost some money.
Yeah.
But I think they have to have the choice that we're all facing in front of them. And my guess is they'll come out in a similar way that most of us come out, which is it's advantageous to get that property. And yes, it will incur some costs. So I think you can have that conversation, but I agree, Fran, you don't start that conversation with the costs. You start the conversation with, here's the opportunity we have in front of us. And here's what could happen if we take this opportunity. Here's what could happen if we don't take this opportunity. So let's just think about that.
Yeah.
And then if we do get the property transferred, there will be some costs, and you need to understand what those costs could be. I think that's the way to have the conversation.
I think there'll be a very, very lively discussion over this warrant article before we get to the money part of it.
And just as it relates to not the article so much, but the school committee, do you have or is there a plan in place for the meetings that will transpire between now and then? We have a month and a half roughly where, this particular, this could be discussed in a large meeting where, just like the one that you and Jim put on last month, with the numbers more clearly, just so that nobody's surprised, so that we can assure that, as Paul says, that message is out there.
Yeah.
And what the concrete cost will be over the short term, which is essentially the $40,000
Right.
paying it absent the hundreds that it will cost to plan and then execute whatever we're gonna do with it.
Yeah. I can talk to Jim about it. It's kind of, it'd be really helpful if we could hear from Dave and Anthony before.
Right. And of
Oh.
course, that's that stumbling block, which is they operate on a whole different time scale
Yeah.
to what we're trying to do.
So, okay. Rick?
Yes,
Did you want to chime in on anything?
I did. The reason I asked to be included is because the fire commissioners are going to be discussing a position about this in tomorrow night's meeting, which I had hoped. I didn't realize your meeting was going to happen the day before. That's my bad. But I must disagree with the comments that you, Fran, and Paul have been making. I really think that Article 16 and Article 17, as they're currently laid out, are a pretty comprehensive package. And that in addressing the first point of do we accept transfer, without any information about cost, it seems only to be an emotional question rather than a practical one. If you accept transfer, there's a cost to the transfer. The first cost is going to be the $25,000 estimate of expenses to do it. And then once you have it, you've got to make a commitment to at least a year's worth of maintenance to buy the district time to come to some conclusion about what they want to do. The fact that it's followed by an article that lays out a way and a cost to generating concrete options and reasonable estimates of expense needs to saddle onto that. So I really would not be encouraging you to think of separating these two. You have the opportunity in the coming month or 6 weeks to conduct some public meetings where people see the integrated nature of this. This is a complex question. It's got to be educated in advance of the annual district meeting. People aren't going to be able to absorb this from scratch walking in the door at the annual district meeting. Well, I could go on the same point, but I will stop. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Just one.
I'd have to think about that, because, well, we're hoping, the committee is hoping that along with the 5.5 acres that we'll have the White Pine Forest transferred to us, which I believe is another 3 acres. So that would need to be changed. And, but
Fran?
yeah, yes, Paul.
Thanks, Rick. I just want to clarify my position. My position evolved in the course of my conversation. I actually agree with you. I think that we should have a couple informational meetings prior to the district meeting. I think you're exactly right. This should not come out of the blue. People need to hear it and understand. But I do think in the district meeting, and I think I evolved to a different position than you described, which is that in having the conversation about those line items 16 and 17, I think the way to talk about it, even in that meeting, is to talk first about the broader decision and what the trade-offs are if we don't get the property and if we do get the property. And then if people want the property to be transferred to us, that there will be costs, to have that conversation together as opposed to in separate pieces. So I changed my view on that as we discussed it. And I think I've actually come out in a similar place than that you are in.
Well,
And
go ahead, Seth.
well, I just, to Ray's point, the idea that people being mercurial and the idea that you could approve the transfer and then refuse to fund it. I don't think that that is necessarily something that, I mean, that could happen.
Yeah,
And that in and of itself would create a significant complication. And I mean, I understand maybe, well, is there another way that we could accomplish that same end insofar as not necessarily have it be a binding resolution, like no, I know it may be a waste of time. It wouldn't even maybe be, reasonable, but to have a poll or a straw vote or at a meeting where there's a significant attendance, of just for our own edification and for the village. I mean, I don't know that the idea of having it be accepted and then not funded to me sounds frightening.
yeah.
So that's my only concern with that particular.
Well, I think if we, if we have attendance at, some informational meetings, I think, and we discuss this, we'll see we'll find out what people think about the $45,000 and what they think about, taking the school. The problem is, my experience in the discussions before, it doesn't stop at taking the school. They go, well, what are we going to take the school for? Is it going to be a community center? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? And that's not the decision. The first decision we have to make is if we're going to take the building. And then we can talk about the rest of the stuff. But people sort of get hung up on talking about the uses after we acquire it, instead of actually discussing the acquiring of it. So, well, if the consensus,
Fran,
excuse me 1 second. If the consensus of the committee is to keep Article 16 as is, then, I will acquiesce to that. Paul?
I suspect people want to jump into the question of what we're going to do with it because of the budget implications. And so perhaps you can talk about it in a way that if we make the decision to acquire the property, there are alternatives being considered that would create additional costs for the district, ranging from X amount of money to X amount of money. At least giving people a sense of what the range of costs might be might help you avoid people wanting to dive into the specifics, but also letting people know, being transparent about what the costs would be if we acquire that property.
Okay. All right. So where are we? Lost-
Ray has his hand up.
Lost my agenda.
And Ray has his hand up.
Hi, Ray. Yes.
I think to Paul's point, all your points, I think are very important, that the people want to participate in the discussion of use. And maybe we might be able to satisfy that at the front end so that we can have the discussion of the acquisition and its cost implications limited to just the acquisition. If we clearly lay out, there will be an opportunity for them to participate in what that is the alternative uses are, when we have a better handle on the relative costs. My concern is that you start talking about alternative uses, and I have no numbers to provide them with the implication to their tax bill. But I think they need to know that they will have that opportunity when we get a better handle on the alternative costs.
Right. I agree. Okay. So I'm going to move on to matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. Seth, you had something?
I did. did you want to do minutes first? I have minutes on mine. Does it matter? We can go to the,
We
my
don't-
thing about,
Minutes
didn't
aren't
have
ready
minutes.
for this meeting.
but yeah, I just wanted to ask that the Policy Advisory Committee had discussed a public comment policy, if that could appear on our next agenda for the 29th.
For the 29th?
Uh-huh.
Sure. You
Sounds
want to
good.
talk about it now?
We could talk about it. I don't have a copy of it. I can pull up a copy of it. What it essentially was, well, since I don't have my copy, why don't we just talk about it on that night?
The 29th, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Is there
short
any-
thing, and it's not much.
Is there any public comment?
Yeah. On the Article 16, it seems like you could combine the question of accepting the building and authorizing the $45,000 in one article. So you could say that we're going to vote to accept the land from the town and to authorize expenditure of 45,000, make that one article. And then you won't have the problem of people running away and not paying for it.
Yeah, true.
That's my only suggestion.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Any other public comment?
Yeah, I do. Carol Zeiss. So I just was wondering who came up with the choices if not the school committee meeting? I heard Chief Rude presenting them, but I haven't heard anything from the subcommittee you had. Who came up with the choices of what's going to happen? That's one. And why does an intergovernmental transfer have such a high legal cost? Did the town have to pay that much when they received it from the school committee? Just interested in
No,
that.
no, the school, no, they didn't have to pay anything when the school committee gave it back to the town. The town built it for the school committee, and the school committee just basically washed their hands of it.
So what, I'd be interested in knowing what the expense is
There
for.
there was no expense
No,
associated with that.
that's in the budget that Ray presented for the article.
Yeah. Well, I believe the legal fees are somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000
I know why so high.
because lawyers are expensive and they have to do title searches and Ray's got his hand raised. You want to answer that, Ray?
Yeah, Carol, the quick answer is it's from one legal entity to another. When the school gave it to the town, it was within the one legal entity, the town of Barnstable. We're going from that legal entity to our legal entity, the Katuitt Fire District. And it's just like my transferring my house to you or you to me. It's one legal entity to another. That always is a employment opportunity for the attorneys. You just necessarily have to have the cost. And the insurance is, because we're a new owner, we have to have our own title insurance policy.
But going back to the choices, demolition is one obvious choice. Who came up with the other three? Was that given to you at a committee meeting?
Well,
Or who's coming up with them?
I'll let the chief answer, but in general, the office needs is going to dictate, or going to not dictate, is going to present what their study indicates the use of that building should be. So it's not that anybody's telling them what to do. They're going to do a study, just as they did the last time, but now they have a new resource to incorporate in that study. And based on that, they're going to make recommendations as to use. Paul, does that coincide with what you think?
Yes, those four options came from the school committee.
Yeah, that's pretty much what the school committee's been discussing the whole time, either demo it, use it for district offices, a community center. I don't think we discussed tearing it down and building a new building.
I just sounded like a lot of decisions had been made for they're going to come up with these 4 options. And we've already spent a fair amount of money on a space needs assessment before, and none of that is that being redone again? I understand this is a new entity, but I'm just really concerned with that amount of money and without any guidance from any other citizens in the village before this architectural firm runs with the money again. And remember, last time they came up with a huge expensive fire station as a space needs, and then that had to be redone again, and we had to vote in more money. And I'm just really concerned about that at this point. And the biggest purpose for maintaining that property for the district is to protect the water.
Absolutely. I agree with you. But I think, yeah, I don't know how much of the previous study they're going to incorporate in this. I believe part of this study is looking at the fire station in itself. The last study that we did looked at moving the district offices into the offices that currently exist in the fire station, and putting an addition on the fire station that would be for the bunk rooms and offices and all the needs of the firefighters. And 3 years ago, that was $4 million. Building, going next door and building a 1-story, 1,500 square foot building for the treasurer and district offices was $1.7 million. So, but I think people need to, but I think this time, one of the differences is going to look at making the fire station more accessible, which presently it's not, because it, can't get the right size or standard size fire equipment in there. But
has there been any input besides a few people as to what I'm losing my train of thought, but it just seems like this company may be just taking again and building and coming up with another Taj Mahal plan. We know what the space needs are. We know it's for storage. We know it's for offices for the Ray and Lisa. And I don't know that needs to be reviewed again. We also know that the fire department could use, maybe a better ambulance bay and some other things like that. I'm just really concerned that they're going to over present again, overbuild.
I can say that what they presented last time were not Taj Mahal presentations. They were pretty much bare bones. Despite what the cost that they were not, there was nothing fancy about them. I mean, you're looking at, we wanted a 1,500 square foot building for the, for the offices, and state law says that you have to put 2 bathrooms in there. Not just 1, 2. And they even tell you, the towel racks that you have to use, which, their towel racks, it's like, the $600 hammer the government buys, or $12,000 toilet seat or whatever. we used to hear about.
I would just be cautious in any presentations you do that says, oh, they're going to do this, this, and this as our choices before anybody in the community. Because there were a lot of people on the presentation March 25th that, if you haven't seen, there is a recording out there that you can hear Jim Danhauser and Fran Parks and Jackie Barton present what the school committee has come up with so far.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't sure if Paul had seen it because he had a lot of
No,
questions.
he was there.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I was very worried when I started hearing you guys listing off what they were going to present before an assessment. That's all. I'll be quiet.
Okay. Is there any other public comment?
Yes, Cynthia Gardner, 94 School Street. I hate to have to do this, but I have to do it so I can sleep tonight. I just want to let you know how unhappy I am with my Prudential Committee members. and what your discussion regarding this school committee property entailed this evening. First of all, we're talking about doing a space needs assessment. And when did your committee ever discuss that assessment? When did your committee ever discuss who was going to do that assessment? And when did your committee ever agree to hire this committee that is being spoken of this evening? That's my first. Second, it's very important that when you go to speak about the school committee project, that at least we get our terminology straight. The property is being obtained from the town of Barnstable, not Barnstable County. They're two different things. That was very disheartening to me that our elected officials don't understand that. And finally, I don't understand, was there an RFP put out? When did your committee discuss it? I'd like that answered, please.
We haven't, the Prudential Committee has not discussed this. This came to us from the fire commissioners.
Well, the fire commissioners haven't discussed it either, so I'm totally at a loss.
And, you know, and it's, since we engaged architects previously, we didn't need to do a repeat RFP, from what I understand.
Okay, well, I think we better look at that because the last time we did this 56 High Street property, it was nothing but a disaster. We got plans and we had to go back and vote money to pay for something that was done without getting proper approval. I would hate to make the same mistakes twice.
Well, I don't think they need to reevaluate the 56 High Street property again. But
No, but I'm saying, Fran, you know what I'm saying. That whole scenario was done improperly. I would like to learn from our mistakes and move forward and do things correctly.
I think the point of all of this is to give the citizens of the village accurate information on the costs associated with doing various things with the building. We know the cost of demolishing the building is probably going to be $1 million, you know, by the time we get around to it. But you know, there are people that want to see district offices there. There are people that want to see the fire station go there. There are people that want a community center to go there. And people need to understand that all of those things will have substantial financial impacts on the village. And the only way that we're going to get, you know, accurate figures is to have, you know, the people that know how to give us accurate figures, give us the accurate figures.
Well, I would just like you to please make sure we don't need another RFP because paying another $150,000 to a company to do something that they already did for us before with, I just feel uncomfortable about that sum of money.
Okay, thank you.
Fran,
Yes.
just a quick comment. First of all, Mrs. Gardner, thank you very much for your comments. I wish more Katuitt residents would join and provide us their opinions, and I thank you very much for that. I was the one that misspoke and said Barnstable County. It was a mistake. I meant to say town of Barnstable, and I'm sorry for that. Thanks.
So if we're all set, Mimi McConnell has asked me to read a letter into the minutes concerning the Katuitt School property. First, it is imperative that we take a long view as we contemplate how best the former school property could be used for the benefit of Katuitt's people. Not 10 years from now, or even 20, but 30 at least. We must protect the adjacent well and not allow contamination by what may be seen as benign uses. We should reserve space for likely water treatment facility as our population continues to grow and water purity becomes more of an issue. At the same time, it makes sense to continue to allow tennis courts and other compatible sports for community use, especially our young people. We could create restful park-like shaded areas for all of Katuitt people, especially the people nearest to that area of Katuitt. Planting trees to enhance the area also is a way to combat global warming. The suggested rehabbing of the former school building would be extremely costly, much more than removing it, for example, for a water treatment facility. The suggested community center for seniors will require staffing, special facilities, oversight, and in my view, would not be used by more than a slim number.
I say this at the age of 86. Historically, Freedom Hall has served admirably for community gatherings, special events, elections, etc., and should be maintained as such, not duplicated elsewhere. Moving the fire station to the school site in order to accommodate larger fire engines of today would likely not be welcomed by our taxpayers. Can we not look at making modifications to our present relatively new station? Thank you, Mimi McConnell. So if there's no other public comment or comment by anyone,
Carol, if I can speak one quickly. So hearing that from one person, maybe the next presentation and the Civic Association can help with this, which is why I like to attend these meetings, is to have a workshop, an open comment Zoom meeting where people, again, and we can start tallying what we're hearing. As you know, I know we have the budget night and candidates night coming up in May, the week before the election, but you know, 6 weeks, we can certainly do these things with Zoom meetings and get that public input. I thought the last meeting went very well, and maybe I'll even can go back and start tabulating what the suggestions were and start from that meeting and build for the next one.
okay, thank you. Charlie,
Yes,
pardon me. What are the annual reports done?
they are at the printer.
Oh, okay, all right. Could you let me know when are you going to leave them at the fire station or?
I'll leave some at the fire station, yes, and I'll try to leave some at the library.
Okay, can you leave some at the Coop,
The what?
at the Katuitt Fresh Market,
Oh, okay.
the store?
I'll hand them out.
Yep.
Yeah, because that's probably going to be the best place for people to pick them up.
Okay.
Charlie, do you have a lot of reports left over from last year?
N-
If
well-
you do, maybe you could bring them along. So I didn't get one from last year and other people probably didn't either. So if you could.
I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I might have 10 or so.
Okay. Well,
Okay. So if that's all, our next meeting's going to be April 29th. And we'll finalize the warrant and hopefully we'll have it squared away where we're going to actually have the meeting. And we'll discuss any other issues at that time. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.